Travel isn't just about destinations, it's about the people you meet, the cultures you immerse yourself in, the stories you carry home. I'm Relebogile Mabocha, and on my travel feature, I take you on a journey beyond the guidebook. Each week, I connect with fellow travelers, insiders, and storytellers to bring you the heart of every place. Whether it's a hidden gem right here in South Africa or a dream destination abroad. Join me as we travel through conversations, memories, and inspiration. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
So one of my funnier moments this weekend was when a friend shared a photograph on Facebook of her early morning plunge in a tidal pool with the caption, "Camps Bay at 6. And for a moment there, before I properly woke up, I found myself wondering, does she mean 6 o'clock in the morning or 6 degrees water temperature, I wonder? Obviously, it was the former. Once I had my wits about me, I realized that. But today, I want to remind you that a plunge in a gorgeous tidal pool does not have to be super cold. Neither does it have to be super early in the day, unless you really want it to be. It doesn't have to be super crowded either. We are spoiled for choice when it comes to finding beautiful tidal pools to enjoy in the Western Cape. But don't take my word for it. I'd rather you listen to our guest who has literally written the book on this subject. The book is a new release called A Guide to Tidal Pools of the Western Cape. And it is written by Serai Dowling, who is with us on the line. She is a writer and photographer as well as an open water swimmer who cares very deeply about the subject of tidal pools, which you'll hear listening to her talk about them. It's such a pleasure to have you with us this afternoon, Serai. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Pippa. It's so good to be here.
Thank you. What is it that fascinates you so about tidal pools? Because it's very obvious reading your book that you see them as much more than just a pretty place to swim, as much as they may be that.
Yeah, that's what's become obvious as I've explored the pools around the Western Cape, and there are far more than the 34 I chose.
Yeah.
But it's the extent to which these pools bring together communities that wouldn't ordinarily engage with each other, the extent to which they are harbours of joy and safety for kids swimming, and it's a huge amount of fun to see everybody enjoying this. And because of some of the work I've done in the past in adolescent mental health, I understand the mental health benefits and what we can do with these incredible spaces around our peninsula that we are so spoiled to enjoy.
I love the fact that you see them as places where people come together because, Serai, of course, once upon a time, they were deliberately set up as places where we kept people apart, where certain tidal pools were designated for one race group and others for another, and never the twain should meet. It's a very different story today, though, isn't it?
Absolutely. I cover the incredible history of the pools throughout the book and the apartheid legacy and what we've been left with today. Some of the intentional pools that were built for particular socioeconomic divide and the geography which kind of is maintained today for various reasons. Yeah. But today, most of the pools, not all of them, but most of them are incredibly integrated. You'll see lots of joy, lots of welcoming, lots of spaces that can be reclaimed for a deeper meaning for all of us.
And lots of swimmers in some of them. So Serai, in the years that you have been an open water swimmer yourself, you've seen quite a lot of change, haven't you? From the days when you would have been the only person in the pool, that's not necessarily going to be the case anymore.
It's been quite radical. In wintertime, I used to swim in Camps Bay Tidal Pool with a friend. We were more or less the only two people in the pool swimming lengths. And now we have to dodge the dippers even in wintertime. So I'm so happy that more and more people are getting into the water. But it does mean that some of us that like to swim lengths need to choose better pools to do that in.
Well, that's one of the lovely things about this book because it does involve that kind of practical advice on if you are looking for the best pool for a quick plunge, the best pool for a longer distance swim, the best pool for picnicking by, etc. There's a sort of a categorization that helps you make those decisions. Before we get stuck into the individual pools, though, Serai, I was fascinated by the research you'd done into the history of open water swimming and of tidal pools as a concept. I'd never really thought about who built the first one or where the first one in the world would have been. Do you want to just tell us a little bit more? Obviously, we can't do the whole history, but round about where and when did it all begin?
I know, right? It's absolutely fascinating. And when I was writing the book, my editor had to remind me this is not a master's thesis. Cut it back. But it was incredible to see the advent of the resorts in the UK and how their influence in South Africa many years later led to the development of the tidal pools. Mostly illegally, mostly by individuals who took it upon themselves to close off particular areas that might have been on a rocky shore,
right,
or to build pools themselves. But in around about the 1890s, we saw the pools being built more readily in South Africa, particularly around the Cape Peninsula, which is really one of the first places that we saw the pools, and then it went further up the coast all the way up to East London. But it was really the advent of the railways that opened up Cork Bay, St James and Muizenberg and areas further along the coastline for development, as well as Camps Bay on the other side.
Right.
So we saw more and more of the pools being built, and influenced all by the fitness culture, the idea that cold water and its health benefits, which were observed in the UK and advised by various doctors, more for the men than for the women, started to influence the way we thought about swimming and outdoor swimming here, and what that could mean for our safety, I suppose, along a rocky and unsafe shoreline.
Isn't it funny to think that that's where it began, and here we sit in 2024 with people suddenly newly discovering the benefits of cold water swimming. Nothing new in it at all by the sounds of things.
Absolutely. It's so fascinating, because I think it's one of those things where we just have new names for it every few years. But in fact, we've understood, perhaps at a cellular level, the extent to which these waters are really good for us. And I think many of the pools I mentioned, some of the details of those that were fish traps or whaling, used for whaling along our coastline. And I think the people that used those pools themselves enjoyed them for more than just those purposes. And there wasn't a huge amount of information to indicate that, but anecdotally from some of the sort of stories that have been passed on to me during my interviews, it certainly seems to indicate that sort of globally, as a species, we knew what we were doing when we got into cold water.
Just for anybody who's come in midway to this conversation, my guest is Serai Dowling, who is the author of The Tidal Pools of the Western Cape, exploring 34 of the region's most beautiful pools. And if you've got questions about particular pools, or if you want to tell us about your favourite that you love swimming in and who you go with and how regularly you visit, we'd love to hear from you. The one thing that I think is worth noting, and I love that you've included this in your book, you've not just looked at which ones are lovely to swim in, but which ones are beautiful to look under the water, because I think a lot of people pop in for the dip or the plunge, don't necessarily take the time to explore what is beneath the surface. And in some of these pools, Serai, what is beneath the surface is an absolute treasure trove of sea life. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about some of the life that you have encountered, and which pools in particular are ideal for those who deliberately want to explore that aspect of tidal pool swimming?
Gosh, so many of our pools are so rich with marine life. In fact, the pools provide a shelter and a haven for some of the younger species, but even those that are more established in the intertidal zone. And I've sat quietly on the side of Camps Bay Tidal Pool and watched a beautiful octopus sort of swim between and glide between the rocks. I've been in St James Tidal Pool and had an octopus that's actually quite well known for doing this, tug on an ankle bracelet that I was wearing. I've witnessed otters eating fish in Miller's Point on the rock in the middle of Miller's Point, just quietly on an afternoon. So it's pretty spectacular to be able to be in these places, witness the sea life that's happening in and around us. And there's such an incredible diversity that I think we're so spoiled for choice. And that's one of the things that makes these pools so incredibly special to me. I discovered these when I started swimming lengths and getting fitter and using the pools for that purpose predominantly, and then discovered this incredible, rich marine life. So in the book, I've got an introductory section that introduces some of these incredible creatures that you can find, and I mention in each of the pools which are the predominant species and where you can find them in the pool and where do the sea stars cluster, that sort of thing. Yeah. And then I also have some extra recommended reading if you want to know more about those sorts of species.
Let's, before we talk about individual pools, a question comment/question from our listener, Lisa. Her comment is, none of my local tidal pools allow dogs to swim. Is that the case everywhere, or am I just unlucky in my area?
No, that's the case everywhere. Dogs are not allowed at tidal pools. And I used to be a little bit of I didn't like that. But because I spent so much time at the pools over the years, I've witnessed situations where people have brought dogs where they can be a danger, quite accidentally and not meaning to be. And so the city of Cape Town has made that ruling. They do release a list of the dog-safe beaches every year in round about January, but unfortunately none of the pools are dog-friendly.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And Lisa, thanks for asking the question, and thank you for obeying the signage that is there telling you that. I do appreciate that. I know it's disappointing because I love the idea of being able to have a frolic with your dog in the water, but appreciate you respecting that. You mentioned how some of these pools came to life sort of quasi-legally with people just taking it upon themselves to close off sections and create a tidal pool. Serai, we still have a couple of examples of pools that have not been strictly legally created or in some cases maintained. And I'm thinking about all the drama about access to the pool at the Brass Bell in Cork Bay, and more recently the drama around the tidal pool that isn't there any longer in Hermanus because an apartment block turned it into a regular swimming pool, which has now been deemed illegal. Is it still a point of a lot of contention that people are restricting access to what is at its core intended to be an open public access space?
I think so. When you arrive in Cork Bay and you go to the Brass Bell restaurant, you'll see the pools just behind the restaurant. The pools themselves are no longer the feature the restaurant is. And I think it can make people feel very intimidated to have buildings hanging over the pool with limited access and make it a bit difficult. So I think there's contention about where and how pools are built in and around, and I think there needs to be more open dialogue about why and how that's allowed. These are public open spaces, and given our history, given the exclusionary practices which were law, I can't agree with that approach. I think it's really important that these are safe, free, open spaces, and I make a strong point of that in the book, particularly around the Cork Bay pools, that they are free access. Everybody is welcome to use them. I'm not entirely sure how these things happen, but it's definitely a bone of contention.
And definitely worth pushing back against if you see it happening, and worth fighting for the right to retain that public access as it's meant to be. I did say that we'd love to hear from anybody who is a regular user of any particular tidal pool they want to tell us about. Just pop through a WhatsApp to 072 567 1567. This is an interesting one. Anonymous saying, I lived at Heralds Bay in the early 80s. There was a tidal pool that was designated for bona fide domestic workers only. Does the author know about this one, is the question. Have you ever come across the one at Heralds Bay?
I do, actually. So for the purposes of the book, I decided to keep it to within a 2-hour drive of Cape Town to reach one of these pools. But the later edition will include all of the tidal pools, all the way up, including the ones in Heralds Bay, Vic Bay, George. So there will be a much richer history that will be presented in the next edition. But I know that pool well. It was also a very contentious and very, very sad story that accompanied it.
Thank you. And Anonymous, thank you so much for raising that, because I'd never, ever heard that story before. So I appreciate you telling us about it. We've got Roy on the line from Fishhook, who I believe would like to talk about sea life in tidal pools. Roy, good afternoon.
Hi. Hello, Pippa. Hello. I've swum in all of those pools for decades, and I don't know whether it's just a recent thing, but there's so many sea urchins that are growing on the back walls of the pools particularly. And tourists who don't know about it, they'll come down to Dalebrook and they'll jump into water and lovely, and they swim off to the back wall over there and then put their feet down and hold on to the wall. And suddenly you've got about a pincushion in your foot. And as you know, you've probably had that. It takes ages to get rid of them, and I wish that I brought this up on the Dalebrook Pool Facebook page, and everybody was outraged, saying that it's a natural pool, etc., etc. Well, it's not. It's man-made, and the sea urchins can go somewhere else, and they're also eating up the seaweed. But anyway. So that's my comment, that I wish the city would employ the scuba divers to just go and clean off all those, and they can have a little feast. They can eat them. You know, they're quite good, nutritious.
They're quite a delicacy as well. I think humans, as well as several animal species, as far as I know, love getting into the middle of the sea urchins if they can. So how do you agree with Roy's observation that is becoming a problem in some pools?
In the book, I've observed which of the pools have the predominant sea urchins, and I've made recommendations to wear booties and so forth.
Okay.
The city of Cape Town has become very conscious of how they clean the pools. There was a very strong action taken by a group of people many years ago that sort of proved to the city the extent to which they were damaging sea life, and they've changed their practices. So they're very careful now about how and when they remove sea life and the frequency with which they do so. I'll also be in conversation on Thursday evening with Greg Ulofse, who is the head of the City of Cape Town Coastal Management, discussing the book and these pools at a launch at Exclusive Books at the waterfront. So that would also be a good opportunity to pick his brain on the matter. But I think that as long as people are aware of them and potentially protecting their feet from them, I think, let's keep the urchins as long as we can.
Okay, so Roy, if you'd like to go and engage further, maybe you should get yourself to the waterfront on Thursday evening to join that book launch and chat a bit further. Let's go to the WhatsApp line and to a voice note that's come through from one of our, I think, regular swimmers. Let's take a listen.
Hi Pippa, it's Luana here. I just want to let you know that I am an avid Camps Bay tidal pool swimmer. I frequent it every morning at 8 a.m, drop my daughter off at school at Camps Bay, and I hit the tidal pool, and I can't imagine starting my day without my cold water swim. I don't join anyone in particular, I'm just on my own, but there are so many locals that all sort of have their own routine and come at the same time, and everybody just says hello, and it is just such a happy, peaceful, lovely way to start the day. It really is. It's so medicinal in its own right. That's all I have to say. But get tidal swimming, everybody, or cold water swimming. It just is life-changing.
Luana, thank you so much for that endorsement. And I'm going to picture you now every morning at 8 o'clock going for your dip at Camps Bay. Serai, before we must say goodbye, do you have a personal favourite? I'm now asking you to choose between the many children that you've put into this book, but do you have a personal favourite one?
I've got a top three.
Yep.
Miller's Point, Kalk Bay Tidal Pools, and Camps Bay.
And what is it about those three that make them special?
The extent to which you can do many, many lengths and explore the marine life all at the same time.
Well, I want to thank you so much for doing all the hard work for us and telling us exactly where to go look if we want to explore the tidal life, and telling us where to picnic if we want the sandwiches on the side and the hot chocolate after the swim, and all the hard research that's gone into a really magnificent book. Thank you for sharing it with us, and delighted to hear that there's going to be a follow-up version with even more info. Good luck with the writing thereof. Serai Dowling, lovely to have you on the show today.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, Pippa.
Keep well, please. The Guide to the Tidal Pools of the Western Cape, written by Serai Dowling and published by Rockhopper Books. You will find it in all good stores now at 395 Rand a copy. And as Serai mentioned, if you'd like to attend the book launch, it is Thursday evening this week at Exclusive Books at the V&A Waterfront.
Travel isn't just about destinations. It's about the people you meet, the cultures you immerse yourself in, the stories you carry home. I'm Relebogile Mabotja, and on my travel feature, I take you on a journey beyond the guidebook. Each week, I connect with fellow travelers, insiders, and storytellers to bring you the heart of every place. Whether it's a hidden gem right here in South Africa or a dream destination abroad. Join me as we travel through conversations, memories, and inspiration. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.